called Ur, God talked to a man named Abram. God said, "Abram, go on an adventure to a special land I'll show you." Abram, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot packed up and went to a beautiful land called Canaan. Canaan was filled with green fields and clear blue skies. Abram and Lot had so many sheep and cows. The land they were living on didn't have enough grass and water for all the animals. So, the workers of Abraham and Lot started arguing over the best spots for their animals to eat and drink. Abram wanted everyone to be happy and not fight. He told Lot, "Let's not argue. You choose any part of the land you like, and I'll go the other way." That way, there was enough room for all their animals. Lot looked around and saw a really nice area with lots of water and green grass near the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. It looked like the best spot for his animals, so he chose to move there. Abraham stayed in the land of Canaan where God asked him to stay. Even though Abraham and Lot had to live apart to stop the arguing, Abraham made sure they did it in a kind and peaceful way, showing he was a really good uncle and a wise man. God saw Abram's kind heart and told him, "This whole big, beautiful land will belong to you and your children and their children after them, forever." But Abram and Sarai were very old and didn't have any children. They wondered, how will God's promise come true? One day, 3 special visitors brought amazing news. "Sarai, you're going to have a baby." Sarai laughed because she thought she was too old for that. God also changed their names to Abraham and Sarah to show they were going to start a big family. Then, God said he had to fix the 2 naughty cities near where Lot lived. Abraham was worried for Lot. Lot listened to the angels and escaped with his daughters. But Lot's wife looked back and turned into a salt statue. Then, the most wonderful thing happened. Even though they were very old, Abraham and Sarah had a baby boy named Isaac. Isaac, which means laughter. They were so happy and amazed at God's miracle. Abraham knew then that God always keeps his promises, like giving him a big family and a beautiful land to live in. And that's the story of how Abraham and Sarah learned to trust in God's promises, no matter how impossible they seemed. The end.
Once upon a starry night, in a land filled with whispers of the past and promises for the future, Abraham, a man known for his kindness and faith, received a very tough test from God. God asked him to do something unimaginable, to offer his dearest son Isaac as a special gift back to God. This was to see if Abraham trusted God above all else, even more than he loved his precious son. Abraham's heart felt heavy, like a stone sinking in a deep, deep ocean. But deep inside, he knew he had to trust God, no matter how hard it seemed. So, with a brave yet heavy heart, he prepared for the journey. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft hues of pink and orange, Abraham, Isaac, and their 2 faithful servants set off on a journey filled with uncertainty. Abraham carried the fire and a knife, while Isaac, unaware of what was to come, carried the wood for the fire. As they neared the mountain that God had told them about, Abraham asked his servants to wait for them at the foot of the mountain. "Isaac and I will go up to worship, and then we'll come back to you," he said with a gentle smile. Climbing the mountain, Isaac, with a curious twinkle in his eye, asked, "Father, we have the wood and the fire, but where is the lamb for the offering?" Abraham, with a heart full of hope, replied, "My son, God will take care of it. He will provide the lamb for the offering." Reaching the top, Abraham built an altar, the most difficult one he ever had to make. He arranged the wood, and with a heart weighed down by a sea of emotions, he gently placed Isaac on the altar, ready to show God that he trusted him completely. But just as Abraham raised the knife, voice as powerful as thunder, but as gentle as a whisper, stopped him. "Stop, Abraham." It was an angel sent by God. The angel said, "You've shown that you trust God above all by being willing to give up your only son." Then Abraham saw a ram caught in some nearby bushes. With a heart bursting with relief and gratitude, he untied Isaac, and together they offered the ram to God. It was a moment filled with so much joy and thankfulness. Abraham and Isaac returned home, their bond stronger than ever, their hearts filled with the knowledge that when you trust in God, He always provides, just in the right way and at the right time. And so, under the same stars that had witnessed their journey, Abraham and Isaac found comfort in knowing that no matter what, God's love and care would always guide them, just like it guides us all. The end. The adventure of Abraham and Isaac. A new beginning. Once upon a time, after a big adventure on a mountain, Abraham and his son Isaac were on their way back home. Then, while the stars twinkled like tiny smiles above them, a kind angel came with a message that made their hearts dance. "Abraham," the angel said, "your family will be as numerous as the stars. And guess what? They're going to bring happiness to the whole wide world." It was like a secret promise about a hero who had come from their family tree, someone very special named Jesus. But when they got back home, they found themselves in a very quiet house. Sarah, the laughter and love of their home, had gone on a journey to the stars. Abraham and Isaac felt very sad, missing her warm hugs and bright smile. Abraham had an idea to bring some joy back into their home. He called his most trusted friend, a wise old servant, and gave him a very important mission. "It's time for Isaac to find a companion, someone to share stories and dreams with," Abraham said. "Please find a kind lady from our family for Isaac." The servant set off on his camels, hoping for a little help from the stars. As he reached a faraway land, he made a wish. "Let the right lady be the one who offers water to my thirsty camels." It wasn't just any wish. It was a special kind of hope that only the kindest hearts could fulfill. Like a scene from a beautiful story, along came Rebecca with a smile as bright as the dawn. She saw the camels, tired and thirsty, and offered them cool, refreshing water. The servant's eyes sparkled with joy. This must be the one, he thought. She was kind, just like the wish. Rebecca, brave and full of adventure, said yes to a new journey. She traveled across the deserts and mountains to meet Isaac. When Isaac saw her, it was like spring had come to his heart, filling it with flowers and sunshine. Rebecca's kindness and laughter brought new stories and dreams to their home. Isaac and Rebecca, hand in hand, started a wonderful adventure together, full of love and promise. And so, the story of Abraham, Isaac, and now Rebecca reminds us all. After every big adventure, after every sad goodbye, there's always a new beginning, a chance for love and joy to grow again, just like the stars that twinkle in the night sky. The end. Jacob and Esau, a story of brothers and forgiveness. Once upon a time, in a land of ancient wonders, Isaac and Rebekah were blessed with not one, but two sons at the same time. These were no ordinary boys. They were twins named Jacob and Esau. Even before they were born, they were already showing their unique personalities, with Esau loving the thrill of the hunt, and Jacob preferring the quiet of home. Esau, the elder, was as rugged and wild as the forests he roamed, while Jacob, The younger was thoughtful and clever, always with a plan up his sleeve. Their parents loved them dearly, but each had a favorite, which brewed a little competition between the brothers. One day, as Esau returned from his adventures, famished and weary, Jacob saw an opportunity. He offered Esau a simple meal in exchange for his birthright, the special status of the firstborn. Esau, thinking little of the future, agreed. This moment would change the course of their lives in ways they couldn't imagine. As the boys grew, so did their rivalry, especially when it came time for their father Isaac to bestow his special blessing. Rebekah, who adored Jacob, devised a plan to ensure her favorite son received this honor. With a bit of disguise and a daring heart, Jacob tricked his father and received the blessing meant for Esau. Realizing the deception, Esau was heartbroken and filled with anger. To protect Jacob from Esau's wrath, Rebekah sent him far away to her brother Laban's house, hoping that time would heal the rift between her sons. Jacob's journey was not easy. He worked tirelessly for Laban, enduring trickery and toil, all for the love of Rachel, Laban's daughter. Yet, through these trials, Jacob grew wiser and kinder, learning the value of honesty and hard work. Years passed, and God called Jacob to return home, but the thought of facing Esau filled Jacob with dread. What if Esau still harbored anger and sought revenge? Nevertheless, Jacob set out, hoping for forgiveness. As Jacob neared his homeland, he prepared for the worst. But to his surprise, Esau greeted him not with anger, but with open arms. The brothers embraced, their past grievances washed away by tears of joy. It was a moment of true reconciliation, proving that love can overcome the deepest divides. Together again, Jacob and Esau showed us that it's never too late to mend broken bonds, and that forgiveness is one of the greatest gifts we can offer. The end. Joseph's journey, from dreamer to dreamkeeper. In a land where families were as vast as the stars, Isaac's heart was full of joy as his son Jacob returned home. Even Esau, who once harbored anger, welcomed Jacob with open arms. But not all was peaceful, for Jacob's sons felt a storm brewing in their hearts, troubled by their younger brother Joseph, who was clearly the apple of their father's eye. Joseph, with his bright, colorful coat, a gift from Jacob, was a dreamer. His dreams, however, sparked flames of jealousy among his brothers. In one dream, Joseph saw his own sheaf of grain standing tall, while his brother's sheaves bowed down to it. In another, the sun, moon, and even the stars bowed before him. These dreams whispered of a future where Joseph would rise above them all, even his parents and brothers. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers in the fields. As he approached, their jealousy turned to dark whispers of getting rid of the dreamer. Reuben, the eldest, suggested they put Joseph in a pit instead, secretly planning to save him later. But while Reuben was away, a caravan heading to Egypt appeared. Judah, another brother, proposed they sell Joseph instead of harming him directly. And so, for 20 pieces of silver, Joseph's fate was sealed, and he was taken far from his homeland, his heart heavy with sorrow and fear. The brothers deceived their father, presenting Joseph's colorful coat, now stained with goat's blood, letting Jacob believe his beloved son was gone forever. Jacob's grief was a deep well of sorrow, with no one able to console him. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph found himself a slave in Potiphar's house. Despite his hardships, Joseph's diligence and trust in God shone brightly, earning him Potiphar's favor and the position of chief servant. But just as things seemed to be looking up, Joseph faced a new trial. Potiphar's wife, with dishonest intentions, falsely accused Joseph, leading to his unjust imprisonment. Even in the depths of a dungeon, Joseph's spirit remained unbroken. He understood that through all trials, honoring God was his true strength, a beacon of hope that illuminated even the darkest of places. The end. Joseph's journey from prison to palace. Once upon a time in a far-off land called Egypt, Joseph found himself in a dark prison, wrongly accused by Potiphar, his former master. But even in such a grim place, Joseph's kindness and helpful nature shone bright. The wardens saw something special in Joseph and trusted him to help organize prison life, making it a better place for everyone. One day, Joseph noticed two new prisoners looking particularly downcast. They were the king's baker and butler, troubled by dreams they couldn't understand. Joseph, with his unwavering faith, assured them, "God can reveal what your dreams mean. Tell me about them." To the butler, Joseph predicted a return to Pharaoh's favor in just 3 days and asked to be remembered. To the baker, however, Joseph had to deliver some unfortunate news. Just as Joseph had said, the butler was restored to his position, but he forgot about Joseph, leaving him in prison. Time passed until one day, Pharaoh himself was troubled by a mysterious dream. Remembering Joseph's gift, the butler finally spoke up, leading to Joseph's summoning. Standing before Pharaoh, Joseph humbly explained that the dream foretold 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. He advised Pharaoh to store food during the good years to prepare for the tough times ahead. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom and his clear connection to God, Pharaoh declared, "You will take charge in Egypt, second only to me." And so, Joseph went from prison to palace, overseeing the land's preparations for the coming famine. As predicted, the years of plenty came and went, and famine spread across the land. Back in Joseph's homeland, his family was starving. Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain, not knowing that they would come face to face with their long-lost brother, now the lordly ruler of Egypt. Joseph recognized his brothers, but they didn't know him. Recalling his boyhood dreams, Joseph realized that this moment was part of a bigger plan. He tested his brothers, demanding they return with their youngest brother Benjamin to prove their honesty. When they returned, Joseph could no longer hide his true identity. Overcome with emotion, he revealed himself to his brothers, saying, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." The brothers were speechless, fearing for what might come next. But Joseph comforted them, explaining that their actions had been part of a divine plan to save their family from famine. "God made me Lord in Egypt so I could save your lives," he told them. Soon after, Jacob and Joseph were joyfully reunited in Egypt, and the entire family was settled there, living in peace and plenty, thanks to Joseph's faith and God's guiding hand. The end.
The Adventure of Baby Moses, From the Nile to the Palace. In a time long ago, Egypt mourned the loss of a great leader, Joseph. He had saved the land from famine and was loved by all. But as years turned into centuries, a new pharaoh came to power, one who did not remember Joseph and his deeds. The Hebrews, Joseph's people, had grown in number and strength, which made the new pharaoh uneasy. Fearing they might become too powerful, he decided to make them slaves, forcing them to build great cities under harsh conditions. Despite the heavy work, the Hebrews continued to grow in numbers, which troubled Pharaoh even more. So he made a terrible order. All newborn Hebrew boys were to be thrown into the river Nile. One Hebrew family, desperate to save their baby boy, crafted a plan. They carefully placed him in a snug, watertight basket and set it afloat among the reeds of the Nile, trusting in a higher power to protect their child. As the basket bobbed gently in the water, the baby's sister watched from a distance, her heart filled with hope and fear. Then, something unexpected happened. Pharaoh's daughter came to the river to bathe and spotted the curious basket among the reeds. With a mix of surprise and compassion, she ordered her servant to bring the basket to her. Upon opening it, the sound of the baby's cry touched her heart. "It's a Hebrew child," she realized, but instead of sending him to a cruel fate, she chose kindness. "Poor little thing, you're so beautiful," she cooed, perhaps even playing with the baby as anyone would with a precious little one. Watching all this unfold, the baby's sister saw an opportunity. She bravely approached the princess and offered to find a Hebrew woman to nurse the child. The princess agreed, not knowing the girl would bring the baby's own mother. Rushing home, the sister called out to her mother, "Come quickly! Oh, hurry!" Without a moment to lose, they both hurried back to the riverbank. There, Pharaoh's daughter entrusted the baby to his mother, saying, "Nurse him for me, and I will pay you." She named him Moses, which means drawn from the water. In a twist of fate, baby Moses was back in his parents' arms, where they taught him to love God and cherish his heritage. But soon, he would grow up in the palace as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, destined for greatness, part of a divine plan far beyond what anyone could imagine. The end.
Moses, from prince to leader. Long ago in Egypt, Moses, a prince raised in Pharaoh's palace, faced a moment that would change his life. Despite his royal upbringing, Moses never forgot he was a Hebrew at heart. One day, he saw an Egyptian mistreating a Hebrew slave. Feeling a rush of protectiveness, Moses looked around and, seeing no one, stepped in to save the slave but ended up making a grave mistake. The very next day, Moses tried to stop a fight between two Hebrews, only to realize his secret was out. The news even reached Pharaoh, forcing Moses to flee to a faraway land called Midian for safety. In Midian, Moses found himself by a well, where he helped the 7 daughters of Reuel, a priest, fend off some rude shepherds. Impressed by Moses' bravery, Reuel invited him home, leading to Moses marrying Reuel's daughter and starting a new life as a shepherd. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the Hebrews suffered greatly under a new pharaoh. Their cries for help reached the heavens, and God was listening. 40 years had passed since Moses left Egypt. While tending his flock, Moses saw something incredible. A bush engulfed in flames that didn't seem to burn up. Curious, Moses went closer, only to hear God's voice calling him by name. God told Moses to take off his sandals, for he was standing on holy ground. God had a mission for Moses to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt and free them from slavery. Moses was scared and unsure, especially about speaking to Pharaoh. But God showed Moses miraculous signs, turning his staff into a serpent and then back again, and even curing his hand from leprosy to prove his power. Still hesitant, Moses worried about his speaking abilities. God, growing impatient with Moses' doubts, promised Aaron, Moses' brother, would help speak for him. Moses bid farewell to Jethro and set off to Egypt with his family. In the mountains, Aaron met Moses, and together they shared God's plan with the Hebrew leaders, who were amazed by the signs and worshipped God, filled with hope. Moses and Aaron then bravely approached Pharaoh, delivering God's message, "Let my people go." But Pharaoh's heart was hard. He refused to listen. God was ready to show his great power to change Pharaoh's mind.
marking the beginning of an epic journey for Moses, from a prince in Egypt to a shepherd in Midian, and finally, a leader of his people. The end.
Moses, from prince to leader. Long ago in Egypt, Moses, a prince raised in Pharaoh's palace, faced a moment that would change his life. Despite his royal upbringing, Moses never forgot he was a Hebrew at heart. One day, he saw an Egyptian mistreating a Hebrew slave. Feeling a rush of protectiveness, Moses looked around and, seeing no one, stepped in to save the slave but ended up making a grave mistake. The very next day, Moses tried to stop a fight between two Hebrews, only to realize his secret was out. The news even reached Pharaoh, forcing Moses to flee to a faraway land called Midian for safety. In Midian, Moses found himself by a well, where he helped the 7 daughters of Reuel, a priest, fend off some rude shepherds. Impressed by Moses' bravery, Reuel invited him home, leading to Moses marrying Reuel's daughter and starting a new life as a shepherd. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the Hebrews suffered greatly under a new pharaoh. Their cries for help reached the heavens, and God was listening. 40 years had passed since Moses left Egypt. While tending his flock, Moses saw something incredible: a bush engulfed in flames that didn't seem to burn up. Curious, Moses went closer, only to hear God's voice calling him by name. God told Moses to take off his sandals, for he was standing on holy ground. God had a mission for Moses to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt and free them from slavery. Moses was scared and unsure, especially about speaking to Pharaoh. But God showed Moses miraculous signs, turning his staff into a serpent and then back again, and even curing his hand from leprosy to prove his power. Still hesitant, Moses worried about his speaking abilities. God, growing impatient with Moses' doubts, promised Aaron, Moses' brother, would help speak for him. Moses bid farewell to Jethro and set off to Egypt with his family. In the mountains, Aaron met Moses, and together they shared God's plan with the Hebrew leaders, who were amazed by the signs and worshipped God, filled with hope. Moses and Aaron then bravely approached Pharaoh, delivering God's message, "Let my people go." But Pharaoh's heart was hard. He refused to listen. God was ready to show his great power to change Pharaoh's mind, marking the beginning of an epic journey for Moses, from a prince in Egypt to a shepherd in Midian, and finally, a leader of his people. The end.
The Great Escape, Moses and the Miraculous Exodus. In the heart of ancient Egypt, where the Nile flows like a lifeline, through the desert a story unfolded that would be told for generations. Pharaoh, the mighty ruler of Egypt, was filled with anger. God had commanded him through Moses to free the Israelite slaves, but Pharaoh's heart was as hard as stone. Work them harder, Pharaoh decreed, increasing the Israelites' burden. He ordered that they find their own straw for brickmaking, yet produce the same number of bricks. The task was impossible, and the slave masters' whips cracked more fiercely. The Hebrews, downtrodden and despairing, blamed Moses and Aaron for their worsened plight. Moses, feeling the weight of their suffering, cried out to the Lord, "You have not rescued your people at all." But God replied with a promise of deliverance, sending Moses and Aaron back to confront Pharaoh. In Pharaoh's court, Aaron's rod transformed into a serpent, a sign from God. Pharaoh's magicians replicated the feat, but Aaron's serpent swallowed theirs. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained unyielding. The following morning, Moses and Aaron waited by the river for Pharaoh. With a divine command, Aaron turned the Nile's waters into blood, but Pharaoh's heart hardened further. refusing the Israelites' release. God then unleashed a series of plagues upon Egypt, each more terrifying than the last. Frogs invaded every crevice of the Egyptians' homes, but Pharaoh's promises to release the slaves were empty. Lice tormented both man and beast, and swarms of flies filled the air. Livestock perished, boils afflicted the Egyptians, and locusts devoured the land's greenery. Darkness enveloped Egypt for 3 days, yet Pharaoh's resolve did not falter. God's final, most grievous plague was to strike at midnight, claiming the firstborn of Egypt. The Israelites were spared, marking their doorposts with lamb's blood as a sign for the angel of death to pass over their homes. That night Egypt wailed as the firstborn were lost. Pharaoh, broken and defeated, urged Moses to take the Israelites and leave. With haste, the Israelites journeyed beyond Egypt's borders, marking the end of their 430 years of bondage. Guided by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, they embarked on a journey to freedom. But Pharaoh's resolve wavered once more. Gathering his army, he pursued the Israelites, trapping them between the cliffs and the sea. In this moment of despair, Moses assured the people, "The Lord shall fight for you." As Moses stretched out his hand over the waters, a great miracle occurred. God parted the Red Sea, providing a path of salvation for his people. The Israelites crossed safely, but as Pharaoh's army followed, the waters crashed down, swallowing the might of Egypt. On that day, Pharaoh learned the power of Israel's God, the Lord over all. The Israelites' journey from slavery to freedom was a testament to faith, courage, and the unyielding power of God. Goodbye, Pharaoh, for the God of Israel had triumphed, leading his people to a new dawn. And so the story of Moses and the Israelites' exodus remains a beacon of hope and faith. A tale of divine deliverance from the chains of oppression, echoing through the ages as a testament to the enduring spirit of freedom. The end.
"40 Years of Faith, the epic journey from Egypt to Canaan." In a monumental act of deliverance, God freed the Israelites from Egyptian bondage. Moses, leading this newly liberated nation, initiated a song of worship, praising God's glorious triumph. But the harsh desert soon tested their faith. Thirsty and despairing at a pool of bitter water, their complaints rose to heaven. Yet God responded with kindness, transforming the water into a refreshing drink. Their complaints didn't cease there. Reminiscing the food in Egypt, they lamented their fate in the desert. But God's providence was unwavering. Quails by evening and heavenly manna each morning became their sustenance. This manna, a sweet reminder of God's care, required trust in daily provision. Yet, some hoarded, only to find their stash spoiled. Except on the Sabbath, teaching a profound lesson in obedience and rest. God's protection extended beyond their basic needs. When the Amalekites attacked, victory was theirs as long as Moses held high the rod of God. This divine partnership was further solidified when God proposed a covenant, making them his special people, an offer they eagerly accepted. At Mount Sinai, Moses received the 10 Commandments, direct instructions on living a life aligned with God's will. But in a grave turn of events, the Israelites fashioned and worshipped a golden calf, inciting divine and mortal wrath. The shattered tablets symbolized broken fidelity. Yet God, in his mercy, renewed the covenant and instructed the construction of the tabernacle, a sacred space signifying his constant presence. As they approached Canaan, the land of promise, spies were sent to survey. Despite the land's bounty, only Joshua and Caleb trusted in God's victory. The majority succumbed to fear, their disbelief poisoning the entire community's faith, leading to a decree from God, a 40-year odyssey in the wilderness. a period of wandering reserved for a generation that witnessed miracles but harbored disbelief. This story, spanning from Exodus 15 to Numbers 14, not only recounts a physical journey but also charts a spiritual expedition of a nation learning to trust and obey their omnipotent, omnibenevolent God. The end. The life of Jesus Christ. In the stillness of Bethlehem's night, a light was kindled that would illuminate the world forevermore. Born to Mary, a woman of profound faith, and Joseph, a man of humble origins, was baby Jesus. His birth was no ordinary event. It was the fulfillment of ancient prophecies, heralding the arrival of the Messiah, a beacon of hope for all humanity. Word of this miraculous birth traveled swiftly, and settling King Herod, who saw in the newborn king a threat to his reign. In a dark decree, he ordered a massacre, hoping to extinguish this emerging light. Yet, under divine guidance, Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt, safeguarding the promise of salvation. Even as a child, Jesus' wisdom was unparalleled, captivating the learned men of the temple with insights far beyond his years. But it was not until the age of 30 that he unveiled his public ministry, a mission destined to transform the very fabric of human existence. Choosing disciples from the humblest walks of life, Jesus embarked on a journey of teaching, healing, and miracle working. He healed the afflicted, restored sight to the blind, and even commanded life to return to the lifeless. Through parables, he unraveled the mysteries of the divine, making the kingdom of heaven accessible to all. Yet, his growing influence and radical teachings of love and forgiveness stirred the waters of the established order. The religious authorities, threatened by his message and popularity, conspired against him. Betrayal came from within his circle, as Judas, one of his own, led adversaries to him for 30 pieces of silver. The ensuing trials were a mockery of justice, culminating in Pilate's reluctant order for crucifixion. Upon the cross, Jesus' final act of love was a plea for forgiveness, not for himself, but for those who persecuted him. His body was laid in a tomb, sealed by a massive stone, marking what seemed to be the end. But the tomb could not hold him. On the third day, it stood empty. Jesus had risen, defeating death itself, appearing to his followers to reaffirm the teachings and the essence of faith. His ascension into heaven was not a farewell but a promise of the Holy Spirit, ensuring his eternal presence and guidance. The life of Jesus, from the manger to the cross and beyond, is a testament to the unfathomable depth of divine love and the power of faith. It's a story that continues to inspire, guide, and give hope to millions, echoing the profound truth that love conquers all. Joshua and the walls of Jericho. In the wake of Moses' passing, a new chapter unfolded for the Israelites. Joshua, anointed by divine decree, stood at the threshold of immense responsibility. He understood that before he could marshal his forces for the battles ahead, he needed to fortify his spirit and align his heart with God's will. As Joshua stepped into his role, God's promise was clear: adhere to the divine commandments, and prosperity and victory in the promised land would be theirs. The Israelites, in turn, pledged unwavering loyalty to Joshua, echoing their commitment to follow God's word. With strategic foresight, Joshua dispatched spies to Canaan, eyeing the formidable city of Jericho. It wasn't long before the king of Jericho, tipped off about the covert visitors, ordered a citywide manhunt. The spies, seeking refuge in Rahab's home, found themselves in peril. But Rahab, recognizing the hand of God with the Israelites, chose to protect them, securing a promise of safety for herself and her family in return. The path to Jericho presented its own trial. The formidable Jordan River. With no bridge in sight, the challenge seemed insurmountable. Yet, faith paved the way where no path existed. As the priests, bearing the Ark of the Covenant, stepped into the river's edge, the waters parted, mirroring the miracles of old. This miraculous crossing, marked by 12 stones at the riverbed and on Canaan's shore, would stand as eternal testaments to God's power and faithfulness. Jericho loomed ahead, its massive walls a daunting barrier. Yet, the appearance of the captain of God's army served as a divine assurance to Joshua that the battle's outcome was already decreed in the heavens. The instructions given to Joshua were unconventional. A silent march around Jericho for 6 days, followed by a climactic procession on the 7th day, culminating in a triumphant blast of trumpets and a unified shout from the Israelites. The walls of Jericho, so long a symbol of invincibility, crumbled to dust, leaving only Rahab's abode untouched, a sign of the covenant kept by the scarlet cord. Rahab and her family were spared, a token of God's mercy amidst judgment. In the aftermath, Jericho's riches were consecrated to God, and Joshua pronounced a dire curse on any who dared to rebuild the city. The fall of Jericho sent ripples throughout Canaan, a clear message that God's favor rested upon Israel. This narrative, rooted in the ancient text of Joshua 1-6, not only recounts a pivotal moment in Israel's history, but also reflects the enduring truth that faith, obedience, and divine guidance can topple the mightiest of obstacles. The end. The mighty Samson, a tale of strength and fate. Long ago, in the land of Israel, under the shadow of Philistine rule, a special child named Samson was born. His birth was a miracle to his mother, who had never been able to have a child. An angel visited her, announcing that she would bear a son who would be a Nazirite from birth. A Nazirite meant he was dedicated to God. The secret to Samson's extraordinary strength lay in a single vow. He must never ever cut his hair. As Samson grew, so did tales of his incredible strength. One day, while Samson was hanging out with a girl named Timnah, a scary big lion attacked him. He battled the fearsome lion with nothing but his bare hands, tearing it apart as if it were a mere piece of paper. This feat amazed all who heard it, showcasing the special power Samson had received from God. Samson's life was a roller coaster of thrilling victories and personal challenges. He frequently clashed with the Philistines, who were cruel to the Israelites. In one remarkable battle, fueled by rage, Samson used the jawbone of a donkey to defeat 1,000 Philistine soldiers, displaying his unbelievable strength, a gift from God. However, Samson's greatest challenge was not on the battlefield but in his heart. He fell deeply in love with a woman named Delilah. The Philistines saw their opportunity and coerced Delilah into uncovering the secret of Samson's strength. After many attempts, Samson finally revealed to her that his power would vanish if his hair were cut. His hair was his only weakness. One night when Samson was asleep, Delilah made a Philistine cut his hair. Samson lost all of his mighty strength and could not fight anymore. The Philistines captured him with ease, treating him harshly and imprisoning him after blinding him, marking the lowest point in Samson's life. But with every passing day of being locked up in prison, Samson's hair grew longer again, and with it, a glimmer of his former strength returned. One day, the leaders of the Philistines gathered in a huge temple to celebrate. They were happy because they had captured Samson finally. The temple was packed with people, even on the roof. About 3,000 people came to see Samson, including all the big bosses of the land. Samson, with his hair starting to grow back, was brought in. He was locked up with chains on the 2 big pillars of the temple for everyone to see him. He was tired, but he still had faith in God. His hair that had been growing back was the secret to his super strength. Samson prayed for one last burst of power and felt his strength return. Then, he pulled the 2 pillars with all his might. The whole temple came crashing down, destroying everyone, including Samson. After everything settled, Samson's family came and took him to be buried near his dad Manoah. People say Samson's tomb is on a mountain in Tel Tzor located near present-day Jerusalem. Samson's story remains a powerful narrative about the consequences of our actions and unfailing strength of God even in our weakest moments. The end. Gideon's brave heart, the battle against the Midianites. Once upon a time in the land of Israel, after a brave leader named Joshua passed away, the people forgot about God. They stopped praying and didn't follow his ways anymore. This made God very sad, and because of this, he allowed the Midianites, not very nice neighbors, to cause trouble. They burned down houses and farms, making it so hard for the Israelites that they had to live in caves. But there was one man, Gideon, who still tried to do his best. He secretly grew some wheat to make bread for his family. He had to be very sneaky and thresh his wheat in a hidden spot near a wine press to avoid the Midianites. One day, while Gideon was working hard, an angel came with a special message from God. The angel told Gideon that God wanted him to do two big things. First, God wanted Gideon to knock down his father's statue of a false god and build an altar for the true God. Gideon was scared but did it anyway because he knew it was the right thing to do. The second thing was even scarier. God wanted Gideon to lead an army against the Midianites. Gideon couldn't believe it. Me, lead an army, he thought. So, he asked God for a sign to make sure God was really with him. He put a piece of wool on the ground and said, "If the wool is wet with dew in the morning but the ground is dry, I'll know you're with me." And guess what? The next morning, the wool was soaking wet, but the ground was bone dry. But Gideon was still a little unsure, so he asked for another sign. This time, he wanted the ground to be wet and the wool to be dry. And God did it again. Now, Gideon knew for sure that God was with him. Gideon started with a big army, but God had a surprising plan. He told Gideon he only needed 300 men to defeat the Midianites. God wanted to make sure everyone knew it was his power, not theirs, that saved them. Even though Gideon was still a bit scared, God gave him a little sneak peek of the Midianites being afraid of him. Gideon and his tiny army then did something very clever. They took trumpets and jars with torches inside and surprised the Midianites in the middle of the night. They made so much noise and showed so much light that the Midianites got scared, ran away, and even fought each other. After this big win, the people wanted Gideon to be their king, but Gideon knew the truth. "I won't be your king," he said. "God is the only one who should rule over us." And that's the story of how Gideon, with just a little faith and a lot of help from God, saved his people. It teaches us that even when things look really tough, if we trust in God, we can do amazing things, just like Gideon did. The end.
The Divine Genesis Adventure, Part 1. In the very, very beginning, there was just darkness and quiet, like a giant, cozy blanket wrapped around the universe. But then, with a twinkle in his eye, God whispered, "Let there be light." And suddenly, the darkness vanished, making room for the most spectacular show on earth. The Divine Genesis Adventure. God smiled and called the bright part day, and the cozy dark part night. And guess what? It was only the beginning of this incredible adventure. On the second day, God decided to create a masterpiece. The sky, so big and blue, like a gigantic playground for the clouds. He named it Heaven, and it became the coolest blanket fort ever as the Divine Genesis. Adventure unfolded. God scooped up the waters and gave the land a big, welcoming hug. "Hello, Earth," God cheered. The waters became seas, and the land was named Earth. God giggled and said, "It's fantastic." Now, on the third day, God got artsy. He painted the ground with vibrant colors, making flowers, trees, and grass dance together in a joyous parade. Each tree had its own special fruit, and God thought it was the most dazzling garden ever. The fourth day brought the grand light show. God placed the sun to play tag with the clouds during the day, the moon to peek out at night, and the stars to twinkle like the friendliest fireflies. The sky turned into a magical magical canvas painted with celestial wonders. But wait, there's more. On the 5th day, God threw a party in the oceans and the sky. Playful fish and graceful birds, and God blessed them with the best dance moves and flying tricks. Be fruitful and multiply. God cheered, and the party went on. Now, for the most exciting part, the 6th day. God created land animals, each with its own quirks and charm. Lions roared, monkeys swung, and butterflies fluttered. But then, in the spotlight of the divine Genesis adventure, God created humans, Adam and Eve. God shaped them with love, like the most fantastic sculptures. He breathed life into them and said, "You're my special creation. Take care of this wonderful world." Adam and Eve explored the enchanting garden, naming animals and sharing giggles with God. God provided a buffet of delicious fruits and green herbs for everyone to enjoy. "It's a feast," God exclaimed. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, God looked at everything with pure joy. It's not just good, it's amazing. And so, the divine Genesis adventure came to an end, with stars twinkling in applause. God had created a world bursting with colors, laughter, and love. The end, but really, just the beginning of more incredible adventures. The end.
The Divine Genesis Adventure, Part 2. Once upon a time, in the enchanting garden where the flowers danced and the trees whispered tales of creation, a new chapter unfolded. The sun kissed the leaves, and the air was filled with the sweet melody of birdsong. Adam and Eve, the first two adventurers in this divine journey, wandered hand in hand, marveling at the wonders around them. But in the shadows, a cunning serpent slithered. His eyes gleamed with mischief as he approached Eve. Did God truly say, "You shall not eat of every tree of the garden"? The serpent hissed, weaving doubt like a mischievous spell. Eve, with innocence in her eyes, replied, "We may eat the fruit of the trees." But God said, "You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die." The serpent, a master of deception, slyly whispered, "You won't die. God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will open, and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil." Fascinated by the idea of wisdom and knowledge, Eve gazed at the tree. Its fruit looked delicious, pleasing to the eyes, and desirable for gaining wisdom. The serpent's words echoed in her mind, and she plucked the fruit, taking a bite. She then offered it to Adam, and he too took a bite. Suddenly, their eyes were open, and they realized they were naked. Quickly, they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves, for they felt exposed in the newfound awareness of good and evil. In the cool of the day, they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden. Fearful and ashamed, Adam and Eve hid among the trees. God called, "Where are you?" Adam admitted, "I heard your voice, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." God, in his infinite wisdom, questioned Adam, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the forbidden tree?" Adam, unable to bear the weight of his choice, pointed to Eve. "The woman you gave me, she gave me the fruit, and I ate." God turned to Eve, who explained, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." The consequences unfolded like pages of a story. God spoke to the serpent, cursing it and foretelling a future conflict. To the woman, God spoke of increased sorrow and pain in childbirth, and the man's dominion over her. To Adam, God spoke of the ground being cursed, bringing forth thorns and thistles, and the toil of labor for sustenance. Yet, even in the face of consequences, God showed mercy. He made tunics of skin for Adam and Eve, clothing them with his grace. As Adam named his wife Eve, the mother of all living, they faced the realities of their choices. the divine Genesis adventure took an unexpected turn, revealing the delicate balance between free will and the consequences of decisions. In the end, God, in his infinite love, placed cherubim at the gates of the garden, guarding the way to the tree of life. The adventures of Adam and Eve continue beyond the garden, a journey of redemption and grace, reminding all that even in our choices, God's love and mercy prevail. And so, the divine narrative unfolded, teaching the young and old alike the profound lessons of choice, consequence, and the enduring grace of a loving Creator. The end.
Once upon a time, in a world where people had forgotten to be kind, there lived a man named Noah who worshipped God. Noah was a man of faith, but everyone else around him disobeyed and hated God. One day, something shocking happened. God spoke to Noah, revealing a plan to destroy the wicked world, sparing only Noah's family. God instructed Noah to build a wooden ark, a boat big enough for his family and many animals. Noah got to work, following God's exact instructions. Probably, people mocked Noah as he explained why he was building an ark. But Noah kept building, also spreading the word about God, though nobody listened. As the ark neared completion, God brought animals of all kinds, 7 of some species, 2 of others. Birds and beasts, tiny and tall, all made their way to the ark. Perhaps people shouted insults at Noah, but they did not stop sinning against God. They did not ask to enter the ark. Finally, all the animals and birds were aboard. God invited Noah and his family into the ark. As they entered, God shut the door. Then the rain came, a great downpour soaking the earth for 40 days and nights. Floodwaters covered towns and villages. The ark floated on top of the rising waters, sheltering Noah from the flood. After 5 months, a drying wind sent by God brought the ark to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Noah and his family waited inside as the water lowered. Noah sent a raven and a dove out. The dove returned with an olive leaf, a sign that the earth was slowly drying. God told Noah it was time to leave the ark. Together, Noah and his family unloaded the animals. Noah, filled with gratitude, built an altar and worshipped God who had saved him and his family from the awful flood. God gave Noah a wonderful promise. Never again would he send a flood to judge human sin. As a great reminder of this promise, God gifted the world with a rainbow, a beautiful sign of his covenant. And so, Noah and his family found new beginnings after the flood. In time, his descendants re-peopled the whole earth, and all nations came from Noah and his children.
God's promise to Abraham. Long ago, after a big flood washed the earth clean, only Noah and his family were safe on a big boat with lots of animals. When the water went away, people started to build things again. They had a big idea. Let's build a tall tower that touches the sky, right up to the stars. They wanted to stay together and be friends forever. But something magical happened. Suddenly, everyone started speaking in different languages. It was so confusing because nobody could understand each other anymore. So, the people split up, finding new places to live with others who spoke the same language. The big city they left behind was called Babel, which means a big mix-up. Then, in a place called Ur, God talked to a man named Abram. God said, "Abram, go on an adventure to a special land I'll show you." Abram, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot packed up and went to a beautiful land called Canaan. Canaan was filled with green fields and clear blue skies. Abram and Lot had so many sheep and cows. The land they were living on didn't have enough grass and water for all the animals. So, the workers of Abraham and Lot started arguing over the best spots for their animals to eat and drink. Abram wanted everyone to be happy and not fight. He told Lot, "Let's not argue. You choose any part of the land you like, and I'll go the other way." That way, there was enough room for all their animals. Lot looked around and saw a really nice area with lots of water and green grass near the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. It looked like the best spot for his animals, so he chose to move there. Abraham stayed in the land of Canaan, where God asked him to stay. Even though Abraham and Lot had to live apart to stop the arguing, Abraham made sure they did it in a kind and peaceful way, showing he was a really good uncle and a wise man. God saw Abram's kind heart and told him, "This whole big, beautiful land will belong to you and your children and their children after them, forever." But Abram and Sarai were very old and didn't have any children. They wondered, how will God's promise come true? One day, 3 special visitors brought amazing news. "Sarai, you're going to have a baby." Sarai laughed because she thought she was too old for that. God also changed their names to Abraham and Sarah to show they were going to start a big family. Then, God said he had to fix the 2 naughty cities near where Lot lived. Abraham was worried for Lot. Lot listened to the angels and escaped with his daughters. But Lot's wife looked back and turned into a salt statue. Then, the most wonderful thing happened. Even though they were very old, Abraham and Sarah had a baby boy named Isaac. Isaac, which means laughter. They were so happy and amazed at God's miracle. Abraham knew then that God always keeps his promises, like giving him a big family and a beautiful land to live in. And that's the story of how Abraham and Sarah learned to trust in God's promises, no matter how impossible they seemed. The end.
Once upon a starry night, in a land filled with whispers of the past and promises for the future, Abraham, a man known for his kindness and faith, received a very tough test from God. God asked him to do something unimaginable, to offer his dearest son Isaac as a special gift back to God. This was to see if Abraham trusted God above all else, even more than he loved his precious son. Abraham's heart felt heavy, like a stone sinking in a deep, deep ocean. But deep inside, he knew he had to trust God, no matter how hard it seemed. So, with a brave yet heavy heart, he prepared for the journey. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft hues of pink and orange, Abraham, Isaac, and their 2 faithful servants set off on a journey filled with uncertainty. Abraham carried the fire and a knife, while Isaac, unaware of what was to come, carried the wood for the fire. As they neared the mountain that God had told them about, Abraham asked his servants to wait for them at the foot of the mountain. "Isaac and I will go up to worship, and then we'll come back to you," he said with a gentle smile. Climbing the mountain, Isaac, with a curious twinkle in his eye, asked, "Father, we have the wood and the fire, but where is the lamb for the offering?" Abraham, with a heart full of hope, replied, "My son, God will take care of it."